In today's video, I'm going to finally be replacing my boiler. Since I moved in here, I've had this Ideal ISAR HE35 boiler, and I mean it works, but it's dying. Since I moved in, I noticed there's been a very small leak from underneath it, hence the ice cream tub, and that's probably been there about 4 years now. And it's such a minor drip that it's not something I've really bothered about. I mean, I should have, but it's, you know, it's been dripping like, we're talking literally, if you put a bit of paper underneath, you might spot one drip a week. And it's coming out the central heating side of things, so it's not like it's mains pressure, so if it did ever fully burst open, it's not going to flood the place. But, so I've been putting it off, but I've known I've needed to replace it. But then more recently, maybe a few months ago, the little display on the front of the boiler's gone out. You used to have a little status display, a little 7-segment display, and that stopped working. And the boiler still seems to work absolutely fine, but now the display's gone out, it's showing there's obviously more faults with it developing. And it's not the water leak, like the water's that's leaking out the pumps going nowhere near to the control circuitry, so it seems that something else is going wrong. And on top of that, it seems like the controls in the front, like the two knobs, aren't actually doing anything, because I've turned the hot water temperature down to the minimum, and the hot water still comes out really hot. So I suspect the controls are starting to play up now, so I just need to replace it. Now I looked around at a bunch of different options, and obviously the traditional thing is you find a company, a bunch of local companies, you get quotes for them all, and then you kind of pick whichever quote looks best. But I just couldn't be bothered, basically. It was just going to be so much effort to find local companies. I've had recommendations from local companies before, but then all of them, then I've seen some of their work and it's not been great, and I just didn't want to go through all that hassle. So I've decided to go to a company called Heatable. Now, Heatable is one of those fixed price boiler companies, so it's a bit like Boxed and I think Warmzilla, iHeat, there's a few of them. And basically what they do is, you go on their website, you get a quote for a boiler, it's a fixed price, so basically the price I paid is what it'll cost, and they subcontract it out to local installers. Now I will say this is not a sponsored video, Heatable have no idea that we've been producing this, but what I wanted to do was try and produce a review of really what the experience is getting a boiler from Heatable. Because there is a bunch of, there's not actually that much content for Heatable, but companies like Box do have a lot of YouTube videos, but they're all very much sponsored influencers, which, you know, I wouldn't really trust for something like this when they're basically being paid off. Talk all the good things about us. So I thought I'd provide this as like a genuine paying customer's review. Okay, just jumping in while I'm editing here. As I mentioned, the video is still not sponsored by Heatable in any way. However, I've set up an affiliate link that I've put in the description and in a pinned comment, and that'll just kind of help me out if you do decide to buy a boiler, because I've spent £2 on a boiler and I kind of need something back from it. What Heatable have also done is they've emailed me and sent me a discount code. I may as well give you it because if you're ordering a boiler, that's quite a big discount. But yeah, they've not sponsored this. They now obviously know that the video is coming because I had to contact them, but they've not seen this video and it'll be going live without any oversight from them at all. So I'll be giving my honest opinion. And yeah, skip through the video because there's a few interesting things I found with the installation. But yes, there's a affiliate link in the pinned comment and in the description. But yeah, now we can get back to the video. So yeah, with Heatable, they give you a fixed price and then they subcontract out to local installers. Now, in some ways that feels a little bit wrong, and I'm probably going to get people in the comments going mad because I've done it. But the reason I've done it is basically just to keep things simple. What I wanted was just to get it installed very quickly. That's very true, I literally booked the install yesterday, and it's installing tomorrow, so it's literally been 2 days. So I've been able to book the install really quickly. They offered the boilers I wanted, because I really wanted Viessmann boilers, so that's what I've gone for, and they offered Viessmann boilers. Lots of local installers want to fit Ideal and Valent, which isn't what I wanted. We'll talk about boiler choice later. Being fixed price, there's not going to be any surprises, because what I didn't want is someone to come and take the boiler off the wall and then find, oh, you need to upgrade this bit, oh, there's a leak here and all this sort of stuff, and then the cost just starts skyrocketing. With Heatable, or at least from what I've seen online, they did a pretty good interview with Alan Hart where I asked a bunch of questions of them. They're basically saying that they'll absorb the cost of any sort of extra work that's required. You know, on some installs there probably won't be any extra work required, so they'll profit a bit more off that, and then they can use that as opposed to substitute or subsidise other jobs where there have been more cost involved. So I thought that seems quite sensible as well. On top of that, it's also just having a bigger company that I can go back against. My fear was if I go for a local installer and they do a bad job, who do I go to? I have to go back to that local installer and tell them they've done a bad job, and then, you know, you're just fighting potentially like a single person or maybe a company with a couple of people. My thinking with Heatable is you've got a big company that's, you know, across the entirety of the UK that's dealing with the install, and they're the one that are responsible for the install. So if the installer that they send out does a bad job, has a problem, damages something, whatever, I can go back to Heatable and say, no, send someone else, and they can send a different installer or whatever. They're just a much bigger company I can go against. And on top of that, I know people have had issues with companies where, for example, they've had an issue with a company, they've tried to get them back, and the company's basically dissolved and then started up under a new name and things like that. Whereas because Heatable is a much larger company, I would trust that it's potentially less likely that they're going to do that. So that was sort of logic for going through them. And realistically, in terms of price, it was costing roughly about the same as any sort of local installer I looked at. And it was way cheaper than the likes of British Gas, which realistically is a similar idea to this. You're going to British Gas, but half the time it's a subcontracted engineer anyway. So yeah, I thought it seemed like a good idea. The final thing that I quite liked about Heatable is that they themselves will assess all the jobs. So when the engineer installs it, this is obviously from what they've said, but apparently what happens is the engineer installs it and they have to submit all the readings and all the photos to Heatable, and Heatable have engineers that analyse that. So what I'm hoping that means that there's just a second set of eyes on it. So if someone's bodged something somewhere, then hopefully someone else will pick that up. Whereas if you go for a local installer, they could bodge something and assume that I'm not going to look at it, and no one else is checking it. They're basically marking their own homework. Whereas with Heatable, someone else is checking it over, which is quite nice. It also means that things like the test figures are actually being checked over by someone who actually knows what they're doing. Because of course they'll give me a sheet of test figures, I'll look and go, that looks about right. But I have no idea about how any of that works. So at least having a proper engineer looking over it does seem to be a good idea. So yeah, that's sort of my logic for going through and why I've gone for Heatable, because people will inevitably be freaking out why I'm not going for a local installer, but yeah, that's kind of my logic behind it. So yeah, this is just a sort of precursor bit before the person comes tomorrow, so I'm going to, just sort of show what I've got here right now. Then what we'll do is we'll go through the ordering process, which I've already filmed, so we'll go through, get it all ordered, look at the ordering process and what information it requires, stuff like that. And then when the person comes tomorrow, we'll take a look at the install. Now obviously I won't be filming the install itself because that'd be a bit weird to turn up the camera and start filming the guy. I'm not going to do that. But also because I don't want them realising that they're being reviewed. I don't want someone going, oh wait, they're reviewing this install, okay, I better do a better job here and there and stuff. And that's my other fear with a lot of the sponsored videos, is that the person installing it knows that they're being watched. So I'm not going to film the exact install happening, but potentially if the person goes out for lunch or goes to the shop or something like that, I might pop in and take a little look at what they're doing and film a little bit of that, but it really depends what happens. So yeah, what we'll now do is we'll go get it ordered and then we'll come back. Okay, so what we'll do is I'll quickly go through and get a quote. I won't focus on this particular step too much because you can easily go and do this. You don't need to actually be buying one to do this step. Then we'll look at what I'm going for, talk about the boiler I've gone for, talk about the additional options you can kind of add on. But the main thing I'm going to focus on is actually what happens after you've actually put the install through, because apparently you need to upload photos or something. And I want to show that because that's the thing you can't do yourself. Or you can't do yourself without buying it. All this sort of quotes type stuff you can just do just out of interest. So, yep, so it's pot fuel powered boiler, gas, it's a combi, I want to replace it with a combi. How old is it? It's about 10, 20 years old. No, I don't want it moved. It's a flat, so you fill all this sort of information in here. Pulls all that, there's stuff there about how many bedrooms I have, stuff like that. Now it asks about the flue, it's an external wall, and that's all it really needs there. So now I've pressed calculate my quote, so it's going to do that, let that go through. Equally, I've seen these quotes a million times, so I'm not going to be surprised I've done this before. And it's going to pull up a list of quotes. And this is basically going to be all the options of boilers that it's sort of matched to me. Now, it's not super high-tech or accurate, but, basically it gives a bunch of options. And as you can see, the cheapest option is this Alpha E-Tech thing. There's various Worcester Bosch ones, but the one I'm going to go for is the Viessmann Vitodens 050W. And there's a few different reasons I'm going to go for this. And this is actually the reason I've picked to use Heatable over other companies such as Boxed. If you're looking at, say, the Worcester Bosch boilers, Boxed is probably a better option because they're actually owned by Worcester Bosch, so their prices are a bit cheaper for those boilers. But I really want a Viessmann boiler. And Heatable is one of the few suppliers that actually offers Viessmann. Most of the companies, especially the local ones I've looked at, are all just Ideal or a few Valents. But I really want a Viessmann for a few different reasons. The first one is purely anecdotal. My parents have had a Viessmann boiler for 15 years, no more than that, a very long time, and it's just never failed. It's been absolutely perfectly reliable, and they just seem to be very well regarded, reliable boilers. They've got nice things like stainless steel heat exchangers as well, which should hopefully improve reliability because they don't corrode, stuff like that. They're just seen as very reliable boilers. The next thing is the modulation ratio this supports. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about this because it's not something I understand it, but there's better videos that explain this from people that are actually professionals in this. So I'll link you to one that I think it was Urban Plumbers did that really goes into detail on how all this works. But essentially, with modern boilers, they have what's called a modulation ratio, which is basically how far the boiler can turn its total output power down. So as you can see, this is a 30 kilowatt boiler. And while I probably do need a 30 kilowatt-ish boiler for the hot water speed, so I can have a decent hot water flow rate, I don't need 30 kilowatts to heat my flat. Because all you really need to do when you're heating a property is to kind of just match the heat loss. So if the property loses, say, 3 kilowatts of heat, you want to replenish that with 3 kilowatts of heat. If you're to run this boiler at 30 kilowatts, what that's going to do is replenish the heat loss super quickly, but then it's going to overshoot the maximum, the temperature you want the room at. The boiler's going to turn off, and it's going to wait until it cools down again, and as soon as you hit below the sort of temperature you want the room at, the boiler's going to kick on again and rapidly heat it up. And there's a couple of problems with that. First of all, the boiler's turning on and off all the time, and that creates wear on the system. But second of all, because the boiler's running at full, it would be running at too high a power and it's not able to dissipate all that heat into the room, what then happens is the water going back to the boiler is too hot. And that means that the boiler runs less efficiently. Ideally, what you want is the water to come out of the boiler hot, dissipate lots of its heat into the room, so the water going back to the boiler is reasonably cool. And I think it's like the bigger that difference in temperature or something, the more efficient the boiler will operate. The video I've linked explains it much better. So what you want is a boiler that can turn its output power down to a reasonably low level. Most of the boilers I've seen, most places, especially around here, seem to quote for Ideal Logic Plus boilers. There's a few others as well. And those don't turn down that low. So if you look at the Ideal Logic Plus 30 kilowatt, you can see that the output power for hot water, or for central heating, sorry, is 24 kilowatts. Usually they spec it so that the total output power of the boiler, so a 30 kilowatt boiler, is for the hot water flow rate. So this is 25 kilowatt for the heating, that's usually a bit lower. And you can see this here has a maximum central heating rate of 24 kilowatts, and that can modulate down to 6.1 kilowatts. And that's a ratio of 1 to 4, so basically it can go down to a quarter of its output power. That's not that great. Whereas the Viessmann, on the other hand, it's got the same 25 kilowatt maximum output power for heating, but this has a 1 to 8 modulation ratio, so it can go down to an eighth of its output power, so it can drop down to 3.2 kilowatt, which is a lot better. So that's one of the other reasons I'm going for the Viessmann, is because I want a boiler that can modulate down to a really low level, because my flat's quite efficient, so I don't need any sort of really high powered output for heating. So I want a boiler that can modulate down really low, which the Viessmann can do. A few other options here as well. There's the Viessmann 100W. This has a 1 to 10 modulation ratio, so it can actually modulate down even lower, but it's a lot more expensive and it's a physically larger boiler, so it probably won't fit in the cupboard, so I'm not going to go for this one. So yeah, we're going to go for the 050W. And this also seems very well related. There's lots of really good reviews. Alan Hart's done some amazing videos on it in huge amounts of detail of this boiler, so I kind of wanted to go for this one. So I'm going to book that and see what the thing comes up with. So this is where it tries to sell you different accessories and controls and stuff like that. So TRVs I don't need, I've already got them all. These are, this is like the most popular section, so we'll go and do them individually down here. So 30 kilowatt, there's no different boiler powers available for this boiler, so that's fine. Next you get to the controls. So as standard it comes with these, what they call standard controls, which is a standard EPH wireless thermostat. And that's what I'm going to go with. And there's a couple of reasons I'm going to go for that. While you can pay to, say, get something like Nest, first of all, I don't want the cost of that right now because I'm paying £2,000 for a boiler. Secondly, I can probably buy a Nest cheaper on Amazon in the sales and I'd be able to put it in myself. And finally, I'd like to do a video installing it, so I'd rather not get someone else to install it for me. But what I have actually checked is that you can see these controls are listed as Boiler Plus compliant. And I've asked Heatable in their live chat, which is actually really good. And they came back and confirmed that this will be connected over OpenTherm, not on-off control. Now, I'll talk about this more later, but essentially there's two ways to connect a thermostat to a boiler. There's the traditional way, which is called on-off control, so your thermostat just turns the boiler on and off. When the room's too cold, it turns it on. When the room's too hot, it turns it off. And your boiler has a temperature set on the boiler of how hot you want the water coming out of the boiler. And that's kind of fixed as to what you set on the front of the boiler. That's the older way of doing it. The much newer way of doing it is through OpenTherm, where your programmer or thermostat is connected with a digital protocol to the boiler, which is an open standard. And it means that your thermostat can talk more, it can pass more detail to the boiler. So your boiler's actually told what the temperature of the room is and what temperature you want the room to become. And the boiler can then calculate the appropriate power levels. So if the room is really cold and you want to heat it up really quickly, the boiler will turn its power output up really high to get a lot of heat into that room. But then if you're just trying to maintain the temperature, the boiler can then turn its power level down automatically and just sit at a very low level, just topping up the heat. So I needed a thermostat that was OpenTherm compatible. And that's something to watch if you are picking these controls, because Hive isn't OpenTherm compatible. And Tado's an interesting one because I can't quite remember. It's something like you can buy an expansion unit that does OpenTherm, but as standard it's not OpenTherm compatible. So be very careful picking these. You'd probably want something like Nest that's definitely OpenTherm compatible, or you'll just end up with on-off control. But what I checked with Heatable is that this will be wired over OpenTherm, which means that the cables coming out of the boiler going to the receiver for this will be for the OpenTherm controls. So that means that in the future, when I replace it with better smart controls, I already have a pair of wires for OpenTherm sitting outside of the boiler. So all I need to do is take the receiver for this off the wall, put the receiver for the new thermostat in, and wire it straight in, which is good. This is one of the other reasons I looked at Heatable, because they stated that their existing controls are wired over OpenTherm. A lot of the other suppliers don't seem to offer that, and they seem to offer thermostats that aren't OpenTherm compatible. And what that would mean is that the wires coming out of the boiler into the receiver wouldn't be OpenTherm, they would just be the on-off switch contacts. That then means that in the future, if I wanted to then switch that out with an OpenTherm capable thermostat, I'd have to connect new wires to the inside of the boiler. Which unfortunately with this boiler, and basically all current modern boilers, you can't do that if you're not gas safe registered. Because whereas with my current boiler, the front panel is just a decorative front panel really, that you can take off, access all the wiring, and there's a separate panel that seals the combustion area. On this new boiler, most new ones, the front panel acts as part of the combustion seal. So if I wanted to add in those OpenTherm wires to the inside of the boiler, legally I'd have to get someone out to come and do that, and I don't fancy paying someone to come and connect two wires to the inside of a boiler. So the good thing is these standard controls are connected over OpenTherm, at least according to the live chat. We'll see if they do that. So I should be able to easily replace this with an OpenTherm capable smart thermostat in the future. Bit rambling there, but yeah, that's what I was talking about there. We'll go into OpenTherm in more detail later. They offer different sort of system care things as well. Standard chemical flush, that's fine. They do this what they call a pro flush. It's just a Magna cleanse. I'm not paying 250 quid for it. Realistically, my system is not that old. I've not had any issues with radiators not getting up to temperature or having cold spots. And I have drained radiators in the past and the water's come out pretty clean, so I'm not too worried about that. They'll do a chemical flush and they will fit a magnetic filter, so I'm not worried about getting this pro flush thing. And lime scale reducer, I don't need that. We don't have hard water here. Landlord certificate, don't need that. Carbon monoxide detector, already got that, and I don't need any radiators, so skip past all that and we can go to book install. So hopefully the date's still available because, yep, that's fine. So as you can see, it's currently Tuesday. Tomorrow's full. That's because it's currently late at night, so they're not going to book something in literally for 10 hours time. So I'm going to do Thursday, 8 AM to 10 AM. Why are contractors morning people? I am not a morning person. That is going to be horrible, but anyway, I'll deal with it. So book that. Various videos. They provide a lot of videos. That's really nice. Next, so I'm going to put in all my details and we'll come back once I've done all that. And just for people that want proof that I'm definitely not a paid, this isn't a paid video, I am actually paying far too much money right now, and actually paying for it. So let that go through. And yeah, that's coming to £2,145, which I don't think I mentioned the price before. It's a lot of money given I don't really want a new boiler right now, but it's actually not too bad. Oh, verification code, great. It's not that bad a price compared to a lot of the other local installers I was looking at. It's very comparable. Yeah, the price is very comparable to... Is the right code? No, it's not. So I got distracted there. So that's payment going through. And yeah, the price is very comparable to what I was finding from a lot of other places. So it's not like I'm paying too much of a premium for going through Heatable, which is quite good. So let that order go through. And there we go. Okay, so this is the next step here. So it's now saying it wants me to upload some pictures. So it wants a picture of the front of the boiler, underneath the boiler, the gas meter and the flue. So that's fine, I can totally go and do that. And that's quite neat. You can actually get the text and upload links, so I can hopefully send that to my phone, then I can take my phone outside and take those photos. So yeah, we'll do that and see if it works. Okay, so now I've gone through on my phone and I've just taken some photos and I've used the thing where it's texting me the link and I've just gone and uploaded the pictures. So front of the boiler, underneath the boiler, gas meter and the flue. So that's all done. So now just says I think if they'll get in touch if they have any questions. So I think realistically it's now just a case of waiting until tomorrow and just I'll see if anyone phones me. Hopefully the pictures are good enough and they don't actually need to do much, but yeah. So that's all the steps done. So now just time to wait and see if they get in touch. So that's it now ordered. So what we'll do before the person comes tomorrow is we'll take a quick look at what I've got here. So yeah, as I mentioned, we've got an Ideal ISAR HE35 boiler. Fairly basic thing. It's probably about 12 years old. It's pretty old and doesn't seem to be a particularly well liked model, but it's getting replaced. As you can see, there's all pipework underneath, so it all seems fairly standard. It's all copper pipework, big condensate pipe, filling loop there. It all looks fairly standard. And I'm hoping there's a decent amount of space there that we'll be able to get in and actually access all the plumbing. My only fear potentially is that the size of this cupboard. I think the new boiler's slightly deeper than this one, and it might drop down slightly lower, so it could potentially have issues fitting into this cupboard. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, and this is the one thing I kind of want to assess the installer on. I'm not testing the installer, but like, will they actually reinstate the cupboard, or will they just kind of leave it and go, good luck, fix it yourself? But, you know, we'll see. It might fit in the cupboard. If not, I might need to try and modify the cupboard a little bit. We'll see what happens. Worst case scenario, it turns out that the company that makes this kitchen, you know, all these cabinets and stuff, it's a company called Moores, they actually still exist and they still seem to make these cabinets in this design. So worst case scenario, I could just order a new cabinet or order replacement bits of wooden panels and stuff and redo it around the new boiler, but I'm hoping it will fit. Next up for the electrical side of things, which is the one side of things I do kind of understand a bit more. The whole boiler stuff's totally alien to me. But the boiler sits on its own 6 amp circuit, and that comes into this fuse spur here. This isn't actually a fuse spur itself, it's actually a MK grid with a fuse module and a double pole switch module. It serves exactly the same purpose, it's just because it can see the switch says boiler on it and I wanted that, so I've got the grid module. So basically there's twin and earth into this to power the boiler, and then out of that comes this 5-core flex that goes into the boiler. That carries live, neutral and earth to the boiler, and then carries 2 switch wires back out of it. So it carries basically, weirdly, a permanent live comes back out of the boiler, and then a switch live going into the boiler. I don't quite know why they've done that, because it basically goes live in, and then live comes back out again, and then switch live goes in. I don't know why they're needing to bring the live back out again, but that's what they've done, so that's what that 5-core flex is there. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with this, because this new boiler won't actually use the original controls. The new boiler will use OpenTherm controls that they're supplying. So realistically, the boiler itself will just need live, neutral and earth. And then it'll need to have OpenTherm connections come out the boiler into like a wireless receiver for the supplied thermostat. I think that's how they'll do it. So they'll probably have to replace that cable. It'll be interesting to see what they do there. Finally, what we'll do is we'll quickly pop open the spur, just take a look inside, just see what's inside here. Because we'll sort of look at it now before, and then after they've left, we'll open it up again and see what they've done. Just kind of curious, really. So here we are behind the spur. Obviously, don't take this apart if you don't know what you're doing. I've obviously isolated all this. And what we've got is we've got swin earth coming in from the consumer units. This is the heating circuit. So we've got live and neutral into the fuse connection unit. Obviously this is a grid, but just imagine this is a fuse connection unit. And then the earths are all just common together in this Wago at the back, just to keep them out of the way. Then what we have is the neutral out of the spur is sort of split in 2. One of those goes onto the flex that goes to the boiler, so that's one of those goes neutral to the boiler. And the other neutral is connected to the 3-core earth that goes to the programmer in the hallway, and that carries neutral to that programmer to power it. Then we have these 2 Wagos here. One of these, well, out of the boiler you've got the grey coat, you've got the black flex coming out of the boiler and the grey flex coming out of the boiler. Those are those 2 switch contacts. So one of those is a permanent live, one of those is then switched live. So those 2 are then connected onto the 3-core earth that goes out to the programmer. So yeah, the grey from the boiler is connected onto the brown from the 3-core earth, and the black from the boiler is connected onto the, whatever colour that is, the black from the 3-core earth. So that's what goes out to the programmer. So this basically is 2 switched connections going out to the programmer. So that's what we have here. So obviously the person's going to need to change this. What I presume they'll end up just needing to do is just wire basically a new flip, basically disconnect the 3-core earth from here. Hopefully they'll just leave it in the back for me. I might ask them to do that just so I've still got it for the future if I need it. And then they just need to run a new 3-core flex to the new boiler and just wire it into the spur and get rid of all the sort of cross connects for the, you know, the programmer and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what we've already got here. So I'll get this all put back on, and it'll be interesting to see what they've done to actually change this afterwards. I just find it quite interesting to see how other people do things. So I'll get this back on, and then we'll wait for the installer to come. So yeah, that's a look at the current setup. So all we now need to do is wait for tomorrow for the person to turn up and fit the new boiler. So you might see a few shots here and there if they do leave it unattended, and I can sort of get a couple of in progress shots, but maybe not. If not, I'll just sort of come back once the new one's installed and we'll take a look at it. So the stuff's starting to turn up, so I'll very quickly show it because the guy's literally turning up outside, so I'm just going to quickly show some of the stuff that's been delivered. So delivered the Viessmann flue. Interestingly, also a plume management kit. I don't think that'll actually be needed here, but they asked for photos of the flue and it's quite close to an air vent, so they're probably sending that just in case, hopefully, because I don't really want that put on because the flue is far enough from the vent, so I shouldn't really need that. Programmer, this here. I'm losing rushing because guys are outside, but yeah, that's OpenTherm compatible, so that's good. That's wireless programmer. Carbon monoxide alarm, didn't order that, but included one, that's as well. I've already got two, but whatever. This MagnaClean, which is this white fancy Wi-Fi sensing one, it's kind of interesting. A few plumbing fins down there, some cleaner inhibitor type stuff, and then a mystery box there, which I don't really know what's in it, but oh yeah, it's a flue bend, cool. So yeah, that's just quickly showing what's been delivered, but the guy is literally pulling his van up outside, so I'm trying to rush this bit through. So here's the boiler now installed. So what we'll do is we'll talk about the sort of installation process, how it went, then we'll go through and take a look at how the install's gone, take a look at some more details, look at some electrical stuff that's maybe going to need a bit tweaked, but we'll talk about all that in a minute. So yeah, the guy turned up probably about 9:30 in the morning. Shortly before that, the merchant turned up, I think it was plumb base, and dropped off all the parts. The plumb base guy also drove his van into a lamppost and then had to sit in the van for 5 hours waiting on recovery, but anyway, that was just made it a bit more eventful. But apart from that, it was all fine, so the guy turned up, put it all in. We was at it a few hours. I'll put some photos up sort of showing the in progress of the install, just sort of going through them. Obviously I wasn't one to bug him, but occasionally I popped through when he went out to the van and just took photos. So yeah, it was all pretty good. Really, really nice guy, really friendly, really sort of helpful. And he wasn't sort of, he was the sort of guy, like, I think he was in my cupboard at one point looking at the gas meter to do stuff, and he saw all my tools and he was like, oh, you're an electrician, because he'd seen obviously my tool set. I was like, no, I'm just a DIYer. And he was actually really nice. He was like, oh, not enough people nowadays do DIY and stuff like that. Like he was actually a really nice guy, so that was really good. And when I was sort of coming through being nosy, he was actually kind of talking about stuff. So it was nice. It wasn't some sort of guy who's just like, oh no, leave me alone, don't talk to me. I'm the mighty gas engineer. He was actually quite nice, which was good. So yeah, we've got it all installed. We'll go through and take a look at it because there's a couple little quirks we'll need to sort of work out with the controls and stuff. But yeah, install was pretty good. Didn't take too long, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. But there's a couple little things we'll need to take a look at electrically. So yeah, that'll be interesting because that thing, I don't really know the gas stuff. It all looks pretty good, but electrically that's the stuff I do understand. There's a couple little things I'll need to tweak. So yeah, oh well, let's go and take a look. So we'll just come in handheld because it'll make it a lot easier. So yep, the boiler is now installed in here. Flue goes outside. The good thing is they didn't need to use that plume management kit. So when I quickly showed the stuff that had been delivered, I mentioned they'd included a plume management kit, which is basically an extra pipe they can add onto the outside of the flue and extend it to different locations, and it kind of runs like vertically up the wall. And obviously I really wouldn't have wanted that because they look quite ugly. I think the reason they included that is because, okay, I probably didn't explain it well earlier, is when you order the thing with Heatable, they ask you to upload photos of the flue. Now there's regulations, I think it's that the flue can't be within 30 centimetres of a vent or a window, and my flue is almost exactly just over, it's so close to 30 centimetres from an air vent, but it is technically over it. I think corner of the air vent to the corner of the flue is exactly 30 centimetres, so they are with it, far enough apart. But they obviously couldn't quite tell from the photo, so they probably just included the plume management kit just in case it was required, and obviously it wasn't, so that's good. Some of the other installers, like Boxed, ask you if you're 30 centimetres from a flue, whereas Heatable don't. So I wonder if that's maybe just like, they maybe just don't trust people to measure properly, which is sensible. So I think they just included the plume management kit just in case. I presume it just gets returned or whatever. So yeah, there's no plume management kit. The flue just goes straight out the wall, and it's just a normal flue terminal on the outside of the wall, and it's all pretty neat. They've sealed it all up fine. I'll put a photo up of that. So yeah, that all looks good. They've then also installed the boiler here. Luckily, we were able to get it to fit in the cabinet. It was very marginal, as you can see. This this plate here just sits literally on the front of the boiler, and if you look around the side here, it just slightly sticks out, but that is fine. This new boiler is quite a bit deeper than the old one. The guys sort of multi-tooled it out, but that's all pretty good. So actually it does fit in the cupboard, which is good, because that was my fear. I thought it might be an issue getting that to fit in there. Sticks below a little bit, but it's all fine. You can still access the controls. And realistically, there's nothing you can really do about this, because the flue has to go out the hole that was originally cored through the wall for the old boiler. So yeah, that's kind of what we're stuck with, but it's good it actually does fit. Very lucky there. They also left all the manuals, so there's all the operating instructions and all the installation guides for everything, including the filter, which I'll take a look at, the controls, the flue, just the boiler, literally everything's included here, which is good. This is a weird sort of tool that's for taking the top off the filter. We'll take a look at that. Then we've got the controller here, which is an EPH something or other. Don't know the exact model, it's probably somewhere here, but it's an EPH wireless programmer. So this connects a receiver, it's wired in under the boiler. We'll take a look at that. And this is also the controller. So you just put it on the tabletop stand for now. That's absolutely fine. But if I wanted to, I could wall mount it. Now, I'm not going to use this controller really. I'm going to replace it with smart controls. So I probably will just leave it on the tabletop stand, because chances are by the time that I'm actually using the heating, I'll have put smart controls in. But they did leave this mounting bracket, so I could use that if I wanted. In fact, just looking at that, those screws look about the same distance as screws on a back box. So in that case, I might mount it on the back box that my current old programmer's on, because there's no additional damage to mount that. So I might mount it there. We'll see. We'll see that later in the video when I disconnect the original controls. So yeah, that's what they left there. So what we'll now do is we'll pop all this boxing off, take a look at what's under the boxing, and then we'll take a look at the filter as well. So here we are in the cupboard under the boiler, and here's the filter they've installed. Now, previously I didn't have any sort of filter, and the guy would just explain that he came through and actually was pretty good and explained, and basically said there wasn't going to be space to put this under the boiler, which makes sense, because while you could probably physically fit it in there, you wouldn't be able to then get the top out and get the magnet out. So instead he's put it in the cupboard under here, but it was pretty good. He came through and explained what you'd have to do. They'd have to cut the cupboard out. But what he's done is he's basically multi-tooled down either side of the cupboard there, and then after he then cut off the filter out, doesn't really encroach on the shelf below, which is good. But then he's cut that out, put the filter in there, and then he's basically just put wooden battens down either side and screwed into it to put the cupboard back together. And to be honest, that's a perfectly neat job. And realistically, actually, there's loads of, once he had it off, I looked behind, there's loads of push-fit pipe connections there from the original install that are behind this panel, so it's quite nice to actually have access potentially if they ever went wrong. So yeah, that's what we've done to the filter there. Now, earlier I mentioned this is like a smart filter, like a Wi-Fi one, and it is, it's weird. So the guy came through and asked for like my Wi-Fi credentials. Thankfully I've got a IoT network, so this isn't on my main network. But yeah, this is like a Wi-Fi enabled filter. So apparently it reports back to the installer all the health stats. And then according to the manual, there's also a user app I can install to monitor the cleanliness of the water as well. It seems a bit over the top, but whatever. Of course it now is on my Wi-Fi. Of course, if I did deeply object to this being on the Wi-Fi, I could just take the batteries out. It's just got a couple of AA's in it, or I could block it off the Wi-Fi through the Unify system, but it's fine. It's on an isolated network. And yeah, you can also press this button on the front and it basically flashes along a little bit and then flashes up to show basically how clean the water is. So green, it's clean. I mean, it's not even really been running much yet. So yeah, that's what that is there. Seems a bit over the top. I mean, this thing costs well over 200 quid, I'm pretty sure. It's not a cheap filter. But yeah, it's nice to see they're actually fitting decent, expensive parts anyway. But yeah, that's the filter they've installed there. And yeah, it's been installed onto the cabinet. But the guy checked and I'm totally happy with it being there. And then as I showed in the original unboxing, they've also installed this carbon monoxide alarm. It's actually a really neat one, nice little Honeywell thing. That's actually really sort of subtle. So installed that up there, that's pretty good. Didn't pay for it, and it was a thing I had apparently to pay for, but they did include it. So I don't know why that is, but anyway, that's up there. Now I don't really need this, given I've got a carbon monoxide alarm over here already, and also my heat alarm is also a heat and carbon monoxide alarm. So I now have 3 carbon monoxide alarms in the same room, so if I die of carbon monoxide poisoning, I'm definitely very unlucky because there's one there, and one there. But anyway, I mean, for the record, I had this one and then I put this in, so I just left that one up because I may as well. But yeah, now I've got 3. So yeah, 3 carbon monoxide alarms in not very much space. So yeah, good they included it, but I didn't really need it. So now here we have all the plumbing under the boiler, and it seems quite neat. It looks less cluttered than what was here before because I think there's a lot of stuff on the old one. But yeah, it looks all fine, I can't really complain at all. They basically cut all the pipes, reconnected on new lengths and just sort of bent them into the correct places. That all looks fine. Seems all absolutely fine. They've also changed the condensate, so I think the old condensate, well, not changed the whole condensate, but the old one was just like a pipe going into a standpipe, whereas this is more like a washing machine connector pushed on, so that's actually quite nice. Looks absolutely fine, can't really complain. And then down here we've got the receiver for that programmer, so it's this EPH receiver. And I quite like what he's done with this. He's brought the cable out of the boiler into the wall and actually brought it into the back of this, which is quite nice. That just means there's no sort of cable hanging out on show. And then that flex comes from this spur to just power the boiler. And we'll take a look at that because that needs tweaked. So yeah, it's a controller in there. But there's one little issue with this, and you'll notice this slight bundle of cable there. So basically what happened with this is I came in when the guy was just chatting to the guy, and I saw him just as he was about to connect this up. And I saw him remove the little plug that's inside this boiler, because I've watched far too many videos on this boiler before I bought it. There's a little plug that's used for the 230 volt switching controls. And I saw him removing that, and I was like, oh, you connect it up for OpenTherm, I presume? And he was like, what? So he was just going to connect it up for on-off control. So we sort of discussed it a little bit, but it was just getting a bit confusing. So I was right, just connect it up as you're doing, just to keep it simple. And then I was like, if I give you some flex and a junction box, can you connect it onto the OpenTherm terminals and I'll sort it myself later? So that's what we ended up doing. So he's wired up just for on-off control now, so we'll take a look at that in a second. And then I basically gave him this 2-core flex and a little junction box. And he basically was happy to connect that onto the OpenTherm terminal. So this flex here, all that's in this junction box is just a pair of Wagos. And that goes onto the OpenTherm connections inside the boiler. So this means that in the future, probably very soon, I can connect this up for OpenTherm, and I might even do a video on that, it depends. I can do a video showing how to switch it over and how to change settings on the boiler to make it do OpenTherm. So yeah, a little bit concerning or a bit annoying that they weren't doing that as standard, because on the Heatable website, they state that the included controls are Boiler Plus compliant. And as far as I'm aware, I mean, so Boiler Plus is a sort of UK sort of building regulation requirement thing. And for a boiler to be Boiler Plus compliant, it has to fit one of a few criterias. And I think it's things like having flue gas heat recovery, smart controls, load compensation, things like that. And now with this, there's no smart controls currently, there's no heat recovery type stuff. The only way this setup could be Boiler Plus compliant is for this to have load compensation, which could only really be achieved by connecting this over OpenTherm. So it's a little bit concerning. It's partly probably on the installer, but also partly probably on Heatable for not telling people that this needs to be connected over OpenTherm, because this receiver can be connected for on-off control or OpenTherm. And if you're just used to installing this every day on older boilers or whatever, and you're not used to OpenTherm, you might not use it. So yeah, it's currently wired up for on-off control, so we'll take a look at that. But thankfully he did break out OpenTherm into this junction box here, so I can sort it myself, which isn't a problem. But if you're getting this installed and you don't want to change things yourself, see, I like changing controls and playing with stuff, so I don't mind doing this. I'll probably find it fun actually switching it over because I'm very sad. But for a lot of people, if you're wanting to get this installed, make sure the installer does connect it over OpenTherm, or you're losing all that load compensation capability. And then with this boiler, the front panel is part of the combustion seal, or at least there's a seal around it. Now, when I mentioned to the guy that, can you just connect this so I don't have to take the front off the boiler, he didn't really seem to. He was like, oh, you can just connect it. He didn't seem to freak out at the thought of me taking the front off the boiler, but I'd rather not do that. So yeah, I got this connected on so I can do it myself without him to take the front off the boiler. But yeah, that's a little bit downside is, yeah, it, as standard was just going to be connected up for on-off control, and it still is. So they weren't going to just connect it. So if I hadn't been in the room at the time looking, it would have been connected up for on-off control, not OpenTherm control. And actually beforehand I did message Heatable on the live chat, and they did say yes, this would be connected with OpenTherm. So I think there's some little sort of breakdown in communication between the installers and what Heatable thinks being installed. So yeah, little downside there. So yeah, we'll pop that off in a minute and take a look at how that's wired. And then finally, we have this flex going into the wall here, and the hole in the wall there is a bit bigger than before. So I've got a little sneaking suspicion what he's done. So what we'll do is we'll pop that spur off and take a look, because I think we might need to do a little bit of work here to fix this. Okay, so I've popped the spur off. Obviously this is all isolated at the consumer unit again. And let's take a look. So obviously showed this before, so let's see what they've changed. Nothing. So yeah, they're still basically exactly the same as before. So these are the cables linked through to the existing programmer. All initials, he's not done anything with this hasn't changed. Which is slightly concerning, because what you'll notice here, there's the flex that went to the old boiler is white. That flex is black, and that's the flex that came pre-attached to the new boiler. And that hole in the wall is bigger. So what are we guessing is going to happen when I pull that flex on that hole in the wall? Let's take that out. Oh, there's cable cuts coming off. Let's see what we're going to find here. Oh, that doesn't look good so far.
Yeah, that's not ideal. Well, I mean, it is. Those are ideal connectors. That was a very unintentional pun, but yeah, these ideals are not ideal. So basically, what he's done is he's cut the existing flex short, cut off these two cores that were the switch contacts, the old boiler, and just linked it through to the flex that came on the new boiler. That's not compliant because you've just got these bare connections with single insulated cables exposed in a wall, and without the use of a tool, you can pull this out, pop these off, and access live wires. This needs to be in some sort of enclosure. Now, why he's done this, I'm not sure. It could be that the flex that came on the boiler wasn't long enough. I can't really tell if he's like, I know that I saw the boiler when he unboxed it and it did come pre-stripped like this, so maybe this is the maximum length that came on the boiler and he couldn't get it into the spur, in which case he should have put a junction box or something here. But equally, it doesn't look like much flex, so my other thinking potentially is that he couldn't get the front off the spur or something, because it's one of these screwless ones and these are a little bit fiddly to get off if you don't know what you're doing. Basically, there's a little clip underneath that you need to put a flathead screwdriver in, and then the front pops off, and then you can get to the screws. And maybe you just didn't want to risk damaging it, pulling it off or something, because yeah, he's not been in here. So he thought, well, rather than taking that off, I'll just do this in the wall. Now, I imagine it's purely as an oversight. He's a gas engineer, not an electrician. And it does kind of beg the question, because obviously gas engineers, they do have to do electrical work. There's a lot of controls involved with boilers, and they can't be expected to get electricians in every time they need to do any controls work. So I do kind of feel like, I don't know, there should be more electrical focus in gas training or something, or maybe like with gas safe registration, you can also look at the person's gas safe registration and it lists all the things they're qualified to work on. I feel there should maybe be an element in there for like electrical controls or something that just cover basics, like, this needing to be in an enclosure or something. So yes, that's not great. Now, could I go to, or should I go to Heatable and kick up a stink and say, oh, it's not been done properly, get someone to fix it? Probably. I can't be bothered. I don't want to have to faff about and get someone in and, shout at the guy. He was a nice guy, he also just had an oversight with this. So I'm not going to cause a fuss with Heatable. I'm just going to sort it myself because, again, I'm sad. I enjoy this sort of stuff. I will gladly enjoy fixing this because I'm very sad. So yeah, I'll fix this all myself. I don't know what I'll do. I'll either put like a Wago box here, or maybe like a surface patras with a flex outlet or something. There's a bit of timber behind there, so I won't be able to recess anything, but yeah, I'll figure something out. So I'll figure out what I'm going to do here to start this wiring. But yeah, that's not ideal. It's ideal connectors, but yeah, ideal connectors stuck in a wall isn't really compliant. So what I'll need to do is I'll need to figure out what we're going to do here, disconnect all this, fix it all properly, and I'll also just disconnect all my existing controls as well, just get them out of the way because currently they're here. I mean, it's not causing any problem, they're not powered up because they've been cut off, but yeah, I'll just clear all this stuff up a little bit and tidy it up. So we'll take a look at the electrical stuff in a second, tidy that up. Okay, so I've gone away and had a think, and I've picked up a flex outlet plate and a surface patras. So what I'll do is I'll mount the surface patras behind here. I can hopefully cover up most of this hole. Get that sort of under there, as long as this filler panel doesn't go in, get that under there. I'll bring the cable into the back from the spur. I may as well take this flex out because it's just an old manky flex. I'll replace this with a bit of 1mm twin and earth, bring it out the spur, bring it into the back of this box here, and then I'll put the flex outlet plate on the front and connect that onto the flex. Because this is quite neat because, try and open it up. This will give me all the connections on the back to make all the connections, and it gives this nice flex outlet with strain relief here, so the flex can clip into that nicely, and that'll be nice and secure. And to be honest, even compared to what was originally here, where it was just the flex again going through here into the spur, this will be a lot better because the problem with even the original install was if you were to tug on that flex, you would pull it through the hole and then it would start pulling on the connections in here. Nothing was really secured. So yeah, this will be a lot better. So yep, that'll sit on the wall in there neatly, so that'll sit like that. That'll be perfectly fine. So yeah, we'll get that sorted. And then what I'll also do is I'll remove half these Wagos because there's a lot of them in here. I'll disconnect the original controls because there's no point having them. And all I'll do is I'll just Wago all the terminals going to the existing controls and just put in a Wago at the back just to get it out of the way. I'll leave the cable in because it could be useful in the future, but I'll disconnect all that. So yeah, I'll go away, tidy this up, and we'll come back and take a look at it. I'll do a little in progress thing while I'm doing it, and we'll come back and take a look at it once it's all sorted. Complete schoolboy error. Turned it off at the consumer unit, so it was all isolated, but forgot to turn off the double pole switch here. So when I took the ideals off, shorted neutral and earth together, stripped the RCD, and literally knocked out half the flat, which is great, because that RCD is also the one that powers all my network stuff, my server, all my smart home stuff, so I've just had to spend ages trying to get everything booted back up again, because
not quite figured out getting the smart home stuff to start up gracefully. It's a lot of a faff once it loses power to get everything back up and running again. So yeah, school by error. If you're doing anything like this, make sure you've isolated the neutral as well, because you'll trip your RCD and then have a bad time. So yeah, anyway, time to get it all sorted properly now. Okay, so we've got some progress. So all I've done is I've just put a surface patch on here, brought some twin and earth out, some 1mm into the flex outlet plate here. And then in the back of the spur, I've cleared out a lot. I've taken the old 5-core flex out. And all I've now got is the twin and earth that's going over to here, goes straight into the back of the spur, and then the earth's going into this Wago just to keep it out of the way, because the terminal blocks in these grid plates are really annoying because of the way they sort of line up with the screw. So I've put them all into a Wago anyway. And then for the original 3-core earth that goes to the programmer in the hall, all I've done is I've left the earth connected to the Wago just so there's still some sort of earth in that cable, just because. And then all the other 3 cores I've just basically put in a single Wago at the back. So that's sitting there totally linked out, so that's not going to do anything, it's not going to touch anything, it's sort of safe in the back there. And I'll do the same at the other end, but then at least means I've left this 3-core earth cable in here, so if I do ever need to feed either mains to that point in the hall, or potentially if I got a smart thermostat like a Nest or something, where I just need to feed like a low voltage DC connection from the receiver here to the actual thermostat in the hall, I could reuse this cable, so I'll just leave that in the back there rather than cutting it out, so that can sit there. And yep, this twin earth goes over to here. So all we need to do is connect the boiler in. So I've got the boiler flex there, I've put some ferrules on the end just to get a nicer connection, put that into the flex outlet plate there and get that screwed back, and then we'll be fine. Okay, so that's all sorted there. So I've connected the flex into the back of the spur like that, or the flex outlet plate like that. I really like the cord grips in these MK ones, it's really nice, so that'll be really neat. And then the box on the wall. And yeah, so there's only screws on one side just because the basic plasterboard is just totally blown out here. But I've covered most of the hole, there's a little bit there, but nothing too major. But there was a stud here, so I've screwed into the stud. And this is one thing I say if you're working with these sort of hard surface boxes, is I tend to use a washer rather than using the screw directly, because if I found a number of times if I use a screw directly and the box just shatters, so the screw sort of spreads out that pressure a little bit and stops the box from falling apart, which is nice. You do get the malleable boxes, like the more squishy ones, which don't do that, but I am far too OCD, and most of them have like squared corners, and it would really bug me having like a rounded corner flex outlet plate on a square box. So I'm really fussy, and out with the surface box you always want to match the brand of the box to the brand of the faceplate so the corners match. Yes, I'm that sad to match that much detail inside a box, inside a cupboard that I'm not going to look at, but anyway. So that's all connected up there, so now just put that back on the wall, and that'll be a lot neater. Then once we'll do that, get the spur screwed back as well, then I'll take a look at it now it's all fixed. Okay, so that's all now sorted, so I've basically got the flex outlet plate on there and that surface box, and that's totally neat. So that's a lot neater than what I had before, obviously. And I'm totally happy with that. It hides the hole. And actually I prefer this to what was here originally as well, because there's now proper strain relief on that flex as well, which is good. And I've checked, the boxing in fits and just sits up against the edge of that, so that's totally fine. So yeah, that sits there. And it means if this cable needed to change in the future or whatever, it's actually much easier to get into that. So yeah, happy with what I've done there. Shouldn't have had to do it myself, but I've done it now. What we'll quickly do as well is we'll take a look at how the controls are wired. So this is the original receiver down here. So we can pop the front off that. Pulls off forward sort of, there we go. So that just comes off, now you see there's a wiring in the back there. So this is what I meant about OpenTherm, is this is actually OpenTherm capable, that's what those terminals are there for. So the OpenTherm wiring should actually connect onto this, but what he's done is he's just wired up for on-off control using the relay contacts. Obviously again, this is isolated because I'm now poking live terminals. So yeah, you obviously got live neutral into the programmer, that's fine, you would need that anyway. But these are just the relay contacts, that's switching the boiler on and off. Whereas what should really be done here to have it with OpenTherm is that these wouldn't be connected, and the wire that's been broken out the boiler here for OpenTherm would be connected into the OpenTherm terminals here. There would then be a link inside the boiler into the terminals that these are connected to, and I can't remember what to do, I think it would short them together, we need to check the manual. I think it would basically short these wires together and then it would use OpenTherm and you would configure the boiler to use OpenTherm. Now this is fine because all I need to do really to convert it is just to disconnect these, probably short them together in a Wago or something, essentially simulating that link that was originally inside the boiler without having to open the boiler up, and then connect OpenTherm onto here and change the settings on the boiler. I'm not going to do that in this video because I might do another video on it, I'm not sure. I mean, realistically, I'm not going to ever use these heating controls for heating because by the time it gets cold enough to need heating, I'll probably have already replaced it with something smart, but I might do a video on it, we'll see. But yeah, it's wired up for on-off control, but it should be OpenTherm. If I was being really nitpicky as well, these wires should be sleeved brown because it is mains voltage switching, so they are technically live, so they should be sleeved up brown. I mean, obviously I know that, so I don't really need to sleeve them up. I think I will, just because I've literally got a bit of old sleeving next to me that I took out of the spur, so I might just sleeve them up now, but it doesn't really need to be done right now because it's not urgent. But yeah, if I was being really nitpicky, they should be sleeved up brown as well. But yeah, that's what the receiver is there.
There we go, so that's now sleeved up brown as it should be. So what I can now do is put the top of the programmer back on, clip that down. There's a screw to do in the bottom, so that'll be a bit fiddly, but I'll do that. And then we should be good to go. So if I turn that on now, it should all fire up. Yep, that's all firing up fine. What I'll now quickly go and do is I'm just going to take the old programmer off, and I'll just try and wall mount the new one just to get it out of the way. And then we'll come back, and then we should be sort of able to wrap this up. But yeah, quickly get that mounted on the wall. That's just something I wanted to do. But yeah, that's the electrics seem to be sorted now. Okay, so here's the original programmer here. Made a video about this ages ago, but obviously that's now totally dead, it's disconnected. So let's get this off the wall. So that lifts up on this one, it comes off. There's then a cable attached onto the back there. That should hopefully pop off there like that, and then get this unscrewed, and then we'll get it disconnected. Okay, so that's it off the wall, so that's the 3-core earth. So I'll just take that out and put it away with the back. I'll leave the earth connected to the back box obviously, but I'll just put this in the back. And people might be wondering why I'm not just reinstating my existing controls, because there is no reason I couldn't just connect this up to that new boiler, use all my existing controls in my smart home system, and it would work fine. The reason I've not done, and in fact I think Heatable I could have actually paid like a $5 extra and they would have done this. Don't know why I pay extra for it, but you know, I think the reason I'm not going to do that is because this system can only do on-off control. It doesn't support OpenTherm. And even though the current controls that have been put in haven't been wired for OpenTherm, ultimately when it comes to actually needing heating, I will have OpenTherm set up. I'll either have the existing programmer set up for OpenTherm, or more than likely I'll have replaced it with something new. So I can't see myself really, I wouldn't really want to set this up, because if I connected it up now, sure it would work the same as the existing controls, or the controls they've given me, but I'm not going to use them to heat because it's the summer, and by the time it's winter it'll be ripped out anyway, so there's no point really using this just because it's not OpenTherm. But that's why I'm not, the reason I'm replacing this is just purely because it's not OpenTherm capable, and eventually I want OpenTherm support. So we'll get these off, get these on Wago, and then get the new thermostat mounted over it. Okay, so that's all the wires now Wagoed in the back, so that can all sit there, and that's now disconnected on both ends, but it's there in case it's ever needed in the future, which, as I mentioned before, would really be if everyone wanted like a smart thermostat here that would be wireless back to receiver, but the thermostat here needed some sort of DC power, so it could carry that. Also, this could actually carry OpenTherm. I think OpenTherm can run up to about 50 meters, I think, 30 or 50 meters. So I could actually carry OpenTherm over this, but most smart thermostats have a receiver that sits next to the boiler, so I wouldn't need to. But if I did want something here that was OpenTherm, I could do that as well with these wires, but they're disconnected for now. And as it turns out, the mounting plate for that thermostat that they gave me does actually mount onto a Patras box. So I'll just screw that up there, get the thermostat mounted. The other option is just to blank this off. I went and got a blanking plate to do that, but I think putting an existing thermostat up here is neater. Keeps it out of the way, keeps it up on the wall, and sure I'm replacing it soon, but because it's mounted to a Patras box, it's not like I'm drilling holes in the wall that they need filled. So we'll get this up, then we'll sum up the install. So there we go, that's it now installed. So yeah, mounted that fine. Bit fiddly because that back plate tends to bend when you do the screws up, but it's on there now, and it's, yeah, that's there. So that's definitely a lot better than having just like a blanking plate. At least it looks like it's meant to be there, and ultimately I'll put something else over it when I get a new thermostat, but yeah, that'll do the job there. Okay, so now with all that out of the way, I've now got it all wired up properly, we can take a look at it working. I mean, that was a total pain having to do that, and I really shouldn't have had to, so it is quite disappointing to see that. But I think it's just a lack of sort of, I don't think it's anything malicious. I think I'm assuming it's like a lack of awareness of the regulations of having to have that enclosed in some sort of junction box. And in the OpenTherm thing, again, new technology, probably just wasn't aware of it. So it is the sort of thing it's why I like doing stuff myself, and it's why, you know, I've put this boiler off for so long, because it's the one thing I need to do where I need to get someone in to do it, because it's gas. It's just, I know how I want things. I want things done very specifically. I want OpenTherm and all that sort of stuff, and it's, you having to like stand over and make sure they do it. So it is something to bear in mind if you are getting a boiler from Heatable or anyone else. You know, if your boiler is OpenTherm compatible, make sure it's being connected over OpenTherm, because, well, you can see here that doesn't always happen, even if both devices are compatible. But yeah, that's all done now, and I'm pretty happy with how it's turned out. That flex outlet plate there's totally neat. Cost a $5, I'm totally happy just doing that. That's all sorted, and I'll leave the OpenTherm cable coiled up there because I'm not using heating at the moment, and eventually I'll get that connected into the thermostat, and I might do a video on it, we'll see. But yeah, let's take a look at the boiler working. So obviously I can't demonstrate the heater or anything, I'm definitely not turning the heat on because it's probably about 30 odd degrees inside at the moment. But we'll take a look at it. So in standby, it just pulses this little white LED, but if you press a button that'll wake it up. So that's it woken up. So currently what it's doing is that's telling me the central heating temperature, so that's the radiator temperature. And you can turn it up and down here. You can use these buttons here and turn the temperature up and down. And I quite like this because, like my old boiler, it was just two knobs that turned between min and max, and you never knew what they were actually set to. So having an actual readout is quite neat. Now,
the radiator temperature here probably isn't going to be that important once OpenTherm is enabled, because OpenTherm will handle the flow temperature. It'll be interesting to see when I've enabled OpenTherm if this is actually still a setting I can change, but yeah, that's the setting for the radiators. Then you've got the hot water temperature for the, well, hot water. That's currently set to 52 degrees. That's probably fine. I'll probably play about with this because realistically, the only thing I really use hot water for is showering and like occasionally washing hands and stuff. So I don't really need it super hot because, you know, 50-degree water is, well, hotter than you could really touch. So I could probably start turning this down, and then that would save a bit of energy. So I'll probably play about with it. I'll maybe just sort of periodically turn it down a little bit every day, and then when I go in the shower, see if it's okay. And if I start finding that I'm having, you know, I can't get enough heat out of the shower, then I'll turn it up again. But yeah, you can change the sort of hot water temperature there. Next up is the pressure readout. So that's currently on 1.1 bar. Obviously that varies depending how hot the water is, but yeah, that's the pressure readout. And it's actually quite nice in this boiler is it has a digital pressure readout. Almost every other boiler I've had, it's just got a gauge underneath, and this one has that as well. But this one has a digital readout as well. It's quite nice, just a bit clearer, and you can kind of track it and see if it's changing. You know, if it is dropping, you can tell that it's dropping by the numbers rather than sort of what the needle's doing. So yeah, that's kind of neat as well. The final setting we have is this one, which is Eco mode, and this is for the hot water. The manual doesn't really explain this very well. The manual isn't that great, but I found a Viessmann video that explained this better. And what this does is this disables preheat. So this is something that a lot of combi boilers have, is they have what's called a preheat function. And you might have noticed if you've got a combi as well, that every so often it just sort of on its own turns itself on, runs for a few minutes or a few seconds, and then turns itself off again. Now what that basically does is it just every so often keeps the burner up to temperature. And the idea is that when you turn the hot water tap on, because the burner is already at temperature, you get hot water a bit quicker. But it's still a combi, so it'll still always take a little while for the hot water to get to you. You know, it just does. That's how combis tend to work. So this doesn't, I don't feel this is really necessary. I'm used to turning on taps and letting it run for a while before it gets hot. So having the preheat on just seems like it's going to waste a lot of energy. You know, I go away for quite often on holiday or go away for a weekend, and I know for a fact the boiler would just be sitting there, because my old one did it, just sitting there every so often burning a little bit of gas just to keep itself hot, which just feels very unnecessary. And also to me that feels like it might cause a bit of strain on it, you know, it's constantly having to do that preheat and heat up, so I don't know. I'm going to turn that off. So that's what you do here. You turn on Eco mode to turn off the preheat. It's a little bit confusing because the documentation doesn't really explain it. In fact, the manual just says, turns Eco mode on and off, and nothing actually explains it until you watch the video. So yeah, on this boiler, Eco mode comes turned off by default, I think. That means it will preheat. If you turn on Eco mode, that turns off the preheat. So now that Eco mode's turned on, it displays this little leaf symbol here, and that indicates that Eco mode's on, so it shouldn't preheat. So yeah, that'll be it there. So that's the other setting I would definitely consider changing. But yeah, that's it working. Now the other thing you might notice is as a thing here it says connect me and there's a QR code. That's because this boiler has built-in Wi-Fi, and it's another thing to watch out for when you're getting the install done. This boiler being the 050W means it's got the built-in Wi-Fi and there's app support. And while they sort of advertise that a bit like, oh, you can buy a Viessmann thermostat and connect it and then use the app to basically, you know, control your heating like a smart thermostat, it's actually a bit more useful than that, because the app can also give information around the health of the boiler. It can show all the stats. You can change some of the settings, really just the settings you can do on the front panel here, but you can also view the gas consumption, which seems really useful, so we'll take a look at that in a minute. But this is where I would definitely say be careful when you're getting it installed. And I'd say this is more on Viessmann's fault than the installer's fault. What Viessmann decided in their infinite wisdom is that obviously you need a SSID and password and QR code and stuff to set the Wi-Fi up. So you've got a boiler here, where would you put that? Oh yeah, inside it. So they don't provide that stuff in the manuals, they don't provide it separately in the pack of information, nor do they stick it on the front. This is just a link to the app, and this is some scan for free stuff. I think it's just like a warranty or something QR code, it's not the Wi-Fi settings. So to actually connect the app to the Wi-Fi, you need that SSID and password that are inside the boiler. There's essentially one sticker stuck to the control panel permanently, and then a little pack of stickers that's sort of tucked in on the control panel that you're meant to obviously, that the installer's meant to obviously take out and stick on the outside of the boiler and stick in the manual and stuff. And there's places in the manual saying to, like, you know, for where the label's to go. But I looked through the manual, there's nothing in this sort of installation instructions saying to stick that sticker on the outside. and there's nothing inside the boiler with, like, a big red sticker with an arrow pointing to the sticker saying stick these on the outside of the boiler. So obviously the installer didn't do that, and I imagine that's very, very common with these because it's so inconspicuous. There's this little sticker with a QR code inside the boiler that most people probably won't think to stick on the outside. Now, I was very lucky. Thankfully, when he was doing the install, I came through and saw it and just thought, I'll take a picture of that just in case. So I've got a picture of it, so I was able to connect it all up, and that's absolutely fine, so that's not a problem. But it is worth, if you get one of these installed, make sure the person either takes the stickers out and sticks them on the outside of the boiler or gives you one, or take a photo of it during the installation, because you'll need that to set the Wi-Fi up. And if you don't have that, you then have to take the front off the boiler, and then if you're doing it all above board, you need to get someone out to retrieve a sticker from inside the boiler. So yeah, just bear that in mind. But yeah, I got that from the photo I took. I downloaded the app, connected it up, it was pretty easy. The instructions detail it all. I think basically you hold in the OK button until it says AP on it, open the app, enter the SSID and password, and then it just connects. And then you connect it to your actual Wi-Fi network. So it's now on my own Wi-Fi network. And it is one of those cloud-based smart things I don't really like, because it requires Viessmann's cloud servers and stuff, and you need an account to use it. But the information it gives is actually quite good, so we'll take a quick look at that now. Okay, so here's the app. This is the main screen it opens up to once you've set it all up, and it's really quite neat. So for example, up on the left here it says heating circuit 1, so you can go into that, and that's just, well, the heating circuit. It's the single sort of loop around all the radiators. I imagine it's designed for fancier systems where you could probably have multiple heating circuits and all sorts of stuff. I mean, it goes, like, Viessmann do some stupidly high-end boilers. They would all use the same app, but yeah, that's it. Here's this where you can adjust set temperature of the heating. So if I turn that down, it takes a little second to update, but you'll see the boiler itself updates, so that's working. If we go out of that, you can do the same for hot water, so that's here. And in here, you can see this where you can change the eco mode. So you can also do it in the front of the boiler like I did previously, but you can also do it in here. And this is one of the few places that they actually explain what this does. There we go. There we go. So you can actually explain what it doesn't explain that it turns off preheat, but you can kind of infer that from the fact that it says possibly longer heating time for the hot water. So yeah, that's what that means there. So that's there. There's also electricity consumption. That's not going to do anything. I think Viessmann sells some sort of electricity monitoring equipment. That's also not something I've got here. But then here we have gas consumption. And this is really, really useful. And this almost sold me on this boiler when I was researching it, because I saw that it had this from the screenshots of the app. And as you can see in here, it gives you a breakdown of your gas consumption. But it breaks this down between hot water and heating, which is really, really useful. And it's done daily, monthly, yearly, stuff like that. Now, personally, I don't have a smart gas meter, so I've had no insight into my gas sort of usage. And while I could get a smart meter, I've just never got around to it. And the problem is where my gas meter is, it's really tight in a cupboard. And I've got a lot of stuff in that cupboard that perfectly fits around the gas meter. So I'd be scared to get it changed, because if they change it to one that's bigger or sticks out more, it'd be a nightmare. So I've not got a smart gas meter, basically. And so this now gives me a breakdown of my gas usage. And because it's broken down by hot water and heating, that's really good. So I can see how much mostly my showers is just hot water usage. I can see how much that is, and I can see how much heating usage is. So that's going to be really, really useful to work out where I'm spending money, which, given the current prices, is really, really good to see. And then, even if you have a smart meter as well, this could still be useful, because first of all, it splits down between hot water and heating. But then additionally, if you say you had other gas appliances, say you had a gas hob or a gas fire, if you had a smart meter, the smart meter would show your total gas usage. The Viessmann app would break down your hot water and heating usage, so you could see that the difference between what the Viessmann app's reporting and what your smart meter's reporting, that would be your gas usage with things like your hob and your fire, so you can break it down even further. So that's really, really nice to see, and this is probably the main thing I'll use this app for. I've not tried integrating it with anything else, and obviously I wouldn't be controlling this from anything, because I'll just have a separate thermostat. There is some sort of Home Assistant integration, there seems to be, and there's probably some sort of API, so there might be some way you could integrate this into other systems, but just this usage alone, being able to have this level of gas monitoring is going to be so useful. Because I'm planning on doing something about my power monitoring as well, so having this gas information from this boiler is going to be fantastic, and because all I've got is the boiler, this is all my gas usage entirely in this app, so that's so useful. There's also stuff about heating system status, so I think that's just the current boiler temperature potentially, and then in here you can see diagnostic information, so the flow temperature, pressure, flue gas temperature, burner status. It's actually really quite cool. It also shows things like the modulation ratio, so you can see, or percentage, so you can see how it's modulating. That is just really, really neat. So yeah, that's the app there. This is going to be really useful. Not necessarily for controlling it or anything, and I'm probably never going to really look at do things like change the settings on the app, because I can just do it on the front of the boiler. But this gas consumption is really, really useful. I'm so happy it's got it. Because while I saw it in screenshots of the app, I couldn't find it listed in the specs for the 050, and I could see some stuff about how the Vitodens 100 had more features and stuff, and I was like, does that mean I have to go to the more expensive boiler to get the gas consumption monitoring? But no, even the 050 has the gas consumption monitoring, which is really, really cool. So yeah, that was a look at the app. Definitely really nice, so good to have, especially for that gas consumption monitoring. But yeah, if you get one of these installed, just make sure you get that QR code or Wi-Fi SSID and password out of the inside of the boiler before the person leaves, because I was lucky that I took a photo here, because if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have actually been able to connect the app without opening the front of the boiler. So yeah, definitely make sure you do that. But yeah, I would definitely blame Viessmann for that, because it seems really stupid hiding it on the inside of the boiler with nothing in the manual or no stickers actually saying stick this sticker on the outside of the boiler. But yeah, the app is actually pretty good. So there you go. That was my new boiler install. And I'm just looking at how long this video is going to be. It's going to be a long video. But if you've stayed to the end, thank you very much for watching. It was a pretty good experience. Now, I was still sort of torn on like, do I go for Heatable or one of these fixed price companies, or do I get a local company? In some ways, after that wiring, it is a bit, you know, the immediate reaction is, oh, I should have done something different. But equally, I've seen the wiring done by some other local companies that were very well reviewed and recommended from family and stuff, and that's just as bad. I think it's more of an industry thing that realistically there should be more electrical training for people doing heating systems, because there's a lot of electrical stuff in it. Got it all fixed now, and realistically, in terms of the value for money, it was pretty good. I got the boiler a couple of days later after ordering it. I got the boiler that I wanted, which is a pretty high-end model, or at least a decent brand. It wasn't some cheap sort of low-end thing. It was installed pretty quickly, and because it was fixed price, if there was any surprises, which I don't think there really was, but if there was any surprises, there wouldn't have been any additional costs with that. Things like, for example, they included that plume kit. Obviously it wasn't needed here, but if I had needed that, there wasn't then going to be any extra charges for that, which is quite nice. And ultimately now, if I do have any issues, I've then got the warranty. So rather than going against a single installer who, you know, might be busy or might be booked up or might go out of business, I mean, hopefully not, but you know, these things can happen. I've got Heatable, so I can go, my warranty is against a much bigger company. And then that's for the first year, the warranty is with Heatable, and then after a year, the warranty passes on to Viessmann. So, and then that gives me a 10-year warranty. And I think that's the other thing with Heatable as well, is that these Viessmann boilers as standard have, I think, a 5-year warranty, maybe 7 years. But with Heatable, because their class is like a Viessmann approved installer or something, you get that additional 10 years, which is quite good. So yeah, apart from that electrical thing that I needed to fix, and obviously the fact that it's not connected up with OpenTherm currently, pretty happy with the install. And ultimately, to be fair, I had a bit of fun fixing the wiring, so whatever. And then we'll sort out the controls in the future, because currently I'm not going to be using those existing controls, as I keep saying. I might connect them up for OpenTherm just to try it out, but in the long term I'll be fitting some sort of smart controls. Not sure what I'll go for, probably something like Nest maybe Tado, but I think it's a bit confusing as Tado's OpenTherm support, so I'll need to look into that. But yeah, I'll fit some sort of smart controls, and I'll come back and do a video on that nearer the time. Hopefully I'll do that before winter, so people can see that before it goes into winter when people need heating controls, so I'll try and do that fairly soon. But yeah, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you've stayed to the end of this very long video, and stand by for more interesting videos about smart home, heating, controls, all that sort of stuff coming in the future. So yeah, and if you're interested in ordering a boiler from Heatable, I've put an affiliate link in the description and in a pinned comment, along with a discount code. So if you use discount code Cameron100, that'll get you £100 off your order. As I mentioned, this video is still not sponsored in any way, but I set up an affiliate link just to kind of help me out and also help you out with that discount code, as it turns out. So yeah, Heatable still have no idea about the contents of this video. It's going up totally unapproved by them. But yeah, there's discount code and an affiliate link if you're interested in ordering. But yeah, thank you very much for watching.